In this video, we're going to go over several minor fixes to our game just to make everything run a little bit smoother here and make sure everything's working as expected. Some of the things we'll fix are, for example, when we jump on top of the enemy, we still take damage. So stuff like that, just minor things. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So first, let's go ahead and make sure that we are no longer taking damage when we land on top of an enemy. To do this, we're going to jump into our enemy damage script. So at the top here, the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to set up a bool, and this is going to be private. And we're going to call this one can apply damage, and we'll set that one equal to true by default. And this is going to be a flag to control our damage application, so whether or not we can apply damage. Next, down in our onCollisionEnter2D method, we're going to check if we can actually apply damage or not. And if we can't, then we're simply going to return out. So we're not going to do anything. So right at the top here, what we can do is we're simply going to say if, and then we're going to do exclamation point, can apply damage. And then we'll say return. So if we're not able to apply damage, we're going to return. Otherwise, we're going to continue on moving forward. So then next down here, after we get the player health component and after we check if it's valid or not, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to ensure that the player is not moving down or landing on top of us. So one way that we could do that is we're going to say our player's rigid body. So for a variable here, and then we're going to get that by doing the collision.gameObject.get component, and it's going to be a component, our rigid body 2D component from the player. So we're going to get the player's rigid body, and then what we want to do is we want to say if the player's rigid body, so the player RB.velocity, because we want to check if it's moving down, so velocity.y, and we want to say if that's less than 0. And then what we're going to want to do is we're just going to want to return. So if the player lands on the enemy and the player is moving down, what we want to do at this point is, so we're going to check that and make sure if they're moving down, then we're going to leave the script and we're going to return. So we'll never get to this take damage spot. Otherwise, if they're not moving down, so if we're running into them from the side, then we're going to go ahead and take that damage. Then lastly, in this script, what we're going to be doing is down at the bottom, we're going to add a public method. And this one we're going to call set can apply damage. This is going to take in a bool, and that's going to be called can apply. And in here, what we're going to do is we're just going to do can apply damage equals can apply. This is going to be able to update the flag that's controlling the damage application. So for this, we're going to add some code to our land on enemy script for this as well. But this is basically going to help us ensure that when we land on the enemy, the player will not take the damage. And then this is also going to help when we reset the level later on in the video, most likely here, to ensure that the damage application continues to work as expected. So with that, we're going to jump over to our land on enemy script. So in this script, what we're going to want to do is after we're checking or confirming that the player is moving down, we're going to want to get a reference here to our enemy damage script. So we'll get a couple lines here, and then this is going to be, again, we'll do var for variable, and then enemy damage. And this is going to equal the collision. So what we're colliding with, collision.gameObject.get component, and then the component type of enemy damage. So we'll grab the enemy damage script. And then next up, we're going to want to do an if statement here. So we're going to say if the enemy damage does not equal, so exclamation point equals null, so there is one, then we're going to want to do the enemy damage dot called it set can apply damage, and we're going to want to set that one to false. So this is going to if we're going down, what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this and set this to false. So that way this is going to take away the ability for the enemy to apply damage as well. So back in our editor here, if we go ahead and test this out, what we'll do is we'll just kind of run through a little bit. We can see that if we hit from the side, we take damage, but if we jump on top of the enemies, we're not actually taking damage anymore, which is what we are expecting to see now that we've made those changes. So we'll just carry on a little bit, pretend like we're playing. And one other thing that we'll notice is, this, we can't reach this. So we're going to want to make that lower. And we also don't have a way to jump over this second spike. It's too far. So we'll just add another platform to that. But so far it's working with the player damage there not being applied when we land on top. So for the power-up box, let's go ahead and jump in here, and I'm just going to simply move this down a little bit. It's nothing special, maybe just down to about here or so. And then for the platform, all we have to do is we'll select this one and do Control-D and move it over here. So it looks all right, just like that. And that should be fine for those two things. And just testing this to make sure it's now good. We can hit that and we can jump on top of there. So that's perfect. All right, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make our player actually respawn at the beginning of the level whenever we run out of health. So for that, we'll jump into our player health script. And then at the bottom, this is pretty easy. So at the bottom, all we're going to do is we're going to add in another method here. And we're going to call this one respawn. And what we'll do in here is we're just going to reload the current scene. So this is going to be scene manager dot load scene. And then in here, it's going to be scene manager dot get active scene. So we're going to get the current scene that we're in dot name. Like so, and then that's going to reload the current scene. And then we just have to actually call this. Don't forget that part. And we can do that here in our die method. So what we want to do, one of the things we want to do anyways, for now is we want to respawn. So we'll go ahead and type that in. And then one last thing that we're going to want to do for this part here is if we jump back into our enemy damage script, and then up here at the top, what we can do is we can do an awake method, and in here we'll want to set that can apply damage and set that equal to true. And this is going to help ensure that the flag gets reset when the scene is reloaded. So now if we jump back into the editor here and we can test this out real quick, if we run, we take our 3 damage and it resets the level for us, which is perfect. We can still, after it's reset, we're still taking the damage. We can still jump on and kill them without taking damage. So everything is working as expected up to this point.